There's always a sound before something breaks. For Juan Ayuso, that sound wasn't loud. It was the quiet weight of months spent holding in frustration, of feeling that what once inspired him was now suffocating him. At 23, he spoke with the maturity of someone twice his age, drained by the politics of modern cycling. "I had to fight against my own teammates," he said later, a sentence that exploded across the cycling world, not out of anger, but as a release. His transfer to Lidl Trek marked the end of a chapter and the beginning of his freedom. Inside UAE Team Emirates, Ayuso had gone from being a golden talent to an uncomfortable presence, a rider whose voice no longer fit the system. In his interview with Daniel Benson, his words carried the raw honesty of a man who'd stopped pretending. "There were moments when I knew something wasn't right," he admitted, describing that invisible fatigue that builds up when passion turns into pressure. "Cycling," he said, "should be about effort, not suffering." But inside UAE, the tension wasn't on the road. It lived within the team bus, between the glances, in the silence. The chemistry had vanished. When you return home after every race and feel there's no connection, something's broken, he reflected. From the outside, UAE looked like a flawless machine. From the inside, it was friction disguised as structure. For Ayuso, leaving wasn't betrayal, it was self-preservation. His voice trembled not from anger, but from relief. The cage had opened. What the headlines called a scandal, he simply called survival. It was the end of noise and the beginning of peace, the moment a cyclist decided that no podium was worth his joy. The explosion wasn't destructive. It was the sound of a rider finally breaking free. Collapse never happens in one moment. It seeps in quietly like water through a wall until the structure gives way. For Juan Ayuso, the cracks inside UAE Team Emirates appeared long before his exit. They weren't explosions, but small fractures. Missed conversations, mixed messages, tension hidden behind polite smiles. He called them little incidents, but they were signs of something deeper, a team that had lost its empathy. Meetings became routines, not discussions. Feedback was ignored, decisions came from above. "We all knew something wasn't right," he confessed, his tone calm but weary. Returning home from races, he felt detached, almost like an outsider within his own team. The laughter on the bus had faded. The camaraderie that once made cycling beautiful was replaced by silence. UAE was still powerful, still winning, but inside the atmosphere had grown heavy. Riders stopped talking openly, unsure of their place. It wasn't hostility, it was distance. Ayuso tried to adapt, but adaptation became exhaustion. The victories felt hollow because the connection was gone. In a sport built on teamwork, the lack of it is fatal. "I felt like we weren't really a team anymore," he admitted. What had once been passion turned mechanical, predictable, cold. From the outside, UAE was the picture of dominance. Inside, it was a pressure cooker. Success without soul. Ayuso realized that even the best results can't fill the emptiness when you no longer believe in the people around you. He wanted to love cycling, not endure it. But every ride, every meeting, reminded him that the joy was slipping away. The cracks had become visible, and no amount of trophies could hide them. By the time his transfer rumours began, the separation wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. The connection between rider and team had already collapsed long before the contract ended. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't against rivals, they're fought within your own team. Juan Ayuso learned that lesson the painful way. "I had to compete against my teammates," he admitted, not in bitterness, but in disbelief. Cycling, to him, was supposed to be pure, a collective struggle toward a shared goal. But inside UAE Team Emirates, the lines blurred. One day, he was a leader, the next, a domestique. "We never knew our exact roles," he said, his tone calm but wounded. That uncertainty turned every race into a silent contest for recognition. The supposed rivalry with João Almeida became the lightning rod of a much bigger issue. "It was never about Almeida," Ayuso explained. "It was about the lack of clarity. In the chaos, friendship gave way to formality, collaboration to calculation. The team bus, once a refuge, felt like a cold office. Every glance, every whisper carried tension. Ayuso's legs still responded, but his mind began to tire. The joy of racing was replaced by anxiety, by the constant need to justify his place. "I'm here to enjoy cycling, not to suffer," he said, a phrase that summed up months of inner turmoil. He wasn't angry, he was disillusioned. Winning without purpose felt meaningless. Inside that polished team environment, the young Spaniard realized something fundamental. Success isn't just about strength, it's about belonging. And he no longer belonged. His honesty was rare, almost rebellious, in a sport where silence is safer than truth. Yet Ayuso's voice carried weight because it was real. Behind the calm delivery lay exhaustion, the fatigue of a young talent trapped in a machine too rigid to see his humanity. The conflict was no longer about power, it was about identity, and that, for Juan Ayuso, was the beginning of the end. The final blow came not on a mountain, but across a negotiation table. January 2025. UAE Team Emirates presented Ayuso with a new contract. Years of stability, millions in salary, and a clause so absurd it bordered on control. 100 million euros. "My problem wasn't the money," he said. "It was the clause." That number wasn't a safety net. It was a lock. It meant ownership, not partnership. When he asked to adjust it, the response was icy. "If you don't sign, we'll see what kind of calendar you have." It wasn't advice. It was a threat. In that moment, Ayuso knew the relationship was beyond repair. What followed was chaos. The media turned his silence into headlines. Anonymous sources twisted the story. "They made me look like the villain," he recalled. The betrayal didn't come from the public. It came from inside the team. The same people who once praised him were now pushing a narrative of arrogance and ingratitude. Ayuso stayed calm, but the damage was done. The place that once felt like home now felt hostile. "I just wanted to feel respected," he said softly. Instead, he felt like a number on a spreadsheet. That famous clause, meant to secure the team's future, became the symbol of its downfall. It revealed everything wrong with modern cycling, the obsession with control, the fear of freedom. And so, Ayuso made his choice. Not for money, not for revenge, but for peace. He walked away, carrying not resentment, but clarity. The clause of 100 million would go down as the price of his liberation. The moment he proved that no contract is worth your happiness. The end of the UAE chapter wasn't a crash, it was a rebirth. Walking into Lidl Trek, Juan Ayuso felt something he hadn't in years. Lightness. No politics, no hierarchy, no invisible weight. Just riders, laughter, and a shared hunger to race. "Here, I can be myself," he said, and the words sounded almost like a sigh of relief. Mads Pedersen welcomed him with warmth. Giulio Ciccone with sincerity. The energy was different, real, human. Training no longer felt like duty, it felt like purpose. Ayuso rediscovered the small joys, a good ride, a shared meal, the quiet satisfaction of belonging. "I want to help others, to contribute," he said. The ego that once fueled him had transformed into humility. The boy who left UAE tired and uncertain now spoke with calm conviction. His transfer wasn't an escape, it was a transformation. Lidl Trek gave him what money couldn't: balance. For the first time in a long time, he smiled, not for cameras, but for himself. In a sport obsessed with control, Ayuso's decision was radical. He chose happiness. Now, wearing red and blue, he rides differently, lighter, freer, whole. What the world saw as a controversy became his salvation. Because sometimes the bravest thing a cyclist can do isn't to attack on a climb, but to reclaim his peace and ride toward his truth.